Hi, I'm Professor Mark Grabowski. This video lecture will discuss your first speech assignment for our public presentation class, which is the oral reading. First, I will explain the directions for the speech. Then I will explain how this speech will be graded. Next, I will offer some tips on how to give the speech. And finally, I will show you some sample videos to give you an idea of what to do and what to expect when you give your speech. Before we start, you want to make sure that you've read the assigned reading, which you can find online at cubreporters.org/public presentation, and that basically will give you tips on how to give a speech. We'll talk about things like varying your voice and mixing up the rate of your speech, slowing it down, sometimes speeding it up for effect, throwing in pauses for emphasis, things like that. So you definitely want to take a look at those readings because they're going to help you give a better speech than you otherwise would. Okay, first, the instructions. You will choose an already written piece of text that is anywhere from 200 to 500 words. It can be poetry or prose, but it must have a minimum of 200 words. So you can select whatever you want. If you have like a favorite skit from Saturday Night Live, or a favorite monologue from a movie, favorite poem, anything like that, or if there's a specific page in a book, obviously you won't be able to read the whole book, but you can just take 200 or 300 words from it and read that part of it, and that's all fine. So once you've selected what you want to read aloud in class, what you'll do is you will retype that text so that it is in 14-point double-spaced font, and that's what you're going to use to read off of in class. So that's why you want it to be a big font, so it's easy for you to read, and you want to have spaces in between your text, in between your lines, so that your eyes don't get lost. You will practice delivery, concentrating on vocal variety, gesture, and physical comfort. You will then deliver a reading of this text to your audience in class. In terms of grading, your delivery is what's going to be primarily evaluated, especially volume and vocal variety. Vocal and physical elements of public speaking will be assessed. You will also be evaluated on your choice of text, and really the key is that you connect with it, that you understand, you seem to understand what the author of your piece is saying. The whole purpose of the speech is to entertain, and there are many ways to entertain people. Of course, you can have them smiling and laughing, but you can also sort of make them feel sad, make them reconsider, make them ponder something. So that's the key with your speech, is to select something that you really connect with and convey that to the audience. Remember, this is the speech is in a manuscript form, which means you're able to use a manuscript, a piece of paper, and read off of it. I don't expect you to memorize your speech. In the future, however, I will expect you to, if not memorize your speech, at least just jot down basic notes and read off of that and speak in an extemporaneous format. But for our purposes for this speech, the focus is just on getting you in front of the class, getting you comfortable speaking to people, and working on things like your vocal variety and tone, things like that. In your forthcoming speeches, of course, you'll actually have to write them as well, but for this speech we're just focusing on the actual speaking part. Okay, so now let's discuss some tips so that you can make your speech as good as possible. The first thing you have to do in public speaking before you even go and start practicing your speech is to decide what you're going to talk about. And this is a really important step. So choose your speech, the text that you want to read carefully. Don't just sort of randomly or haphazardly select something. Select something that you're excited about, that you understand, because like I said, really big part of this speech is to connect with it. You want to be enthusiastic about it. if you have no idea what the person's talking about, or if you're just really not all that interested in it, it's going to show through in your speech, and you won't get as good of a grade. So pick something you can relate to, something that you're kind of excited to go and deliver before the class. If you're not a fan of poetry, don't select a poem just because you think it will seem impressive. On the other hand, if you have a favorite monologue from a movie that you frequently quote, consider doing that. One type of speech, though, I would avoid is selecting a really famous speech. Something that's really well known, such as Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, Lou Gehrig's farewell speech, Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream" speech. You get the idea. And the reason for that is that just it's almost impossible to top those speeches. Even if you go and give a phenomenal speech imitation, the thing is, you have to keep in mind just the context those speeches were delivered in. They had kind of that extra added element of environment, which made the speeches larger than life. And everyone is going to be sort of comparing your speech to this sort of romantic notion they have in their head of the original speech, and it's just hard to go up against that comparison. Experiment with your technique. Use pauses, stress certain words, change your speaking speed, things like that, things which are discussed in those readings that are online for emphasis and effect. If you just get up there and you read your speech in a monotone voice at the same pace, it's going to be boring. The audience isn't going to be entertained, and you won't get a good grade. So mix it up, try some of those different vocal elements that are outlined in the readings, and also consider planning a few gestures in your speech for emphasis and effect. Okay, next tip. Really think about the speech carefully, the text you're reading. What feelings or mood was the author trying to convey? Was the author trying to be funny or poignant? Was he being sarcastic about something? Depending on what sort of feelings or mood he was trying to convey, that's going to affect and determine how you give life to those words, how you deliver your reading. Okay, next tip, and this is really important. Practice, practice, practice. If you read your speech for the first time on the morning of your speech, when you actually deliver it in class, it will be evident in your delivery. Practice makes perfect, so practice your speech over and over until you're tired of it. And try to practice it in front of people, because it's just not the same experience practicing it to yourself in front of the mirror as it is actually practicing it in front of live people. If you haven't practiced it in front of live people before you come into the classroom to deliver it, you're probably going to be a lot more nervous than you otherwise would have. So get that stage fright out of your system ahead of time, or at least reduce it by practicing in front of whatever people who live in your dorm, friends, family, whoever you can find to listen. Remember, it's okay to be nervous, and if this is your first public speech, you probably will be, or if you haven't given a speech in a long time, you probably will find yourself feeling kind of nervous when you get up there. The key is to channel that energy. I mean, it would be a bad thing actually if you were totally relaxed when you got up there and calm, because then when you went to give your speech, you probably wouldn't seem all that enthusiastic or into it. So some nervousness is definitely good, and there have been a lot of famous speakers who've had terrible stage fright and have worked to get over it, and you can too. The key is just once you get up there, concentrate. If you start feeling nervous, just say, hey, wait, what am I doing up here? What's my purpose? It's to give this speech. It's to read this reading. Focus on that, and stop thinking about all the eyes staring at you. And relax, because this speech is worth only 5% of your grade. So now we're going to take a look at some sample speeches. The first two we'll take a look at are speeches that were given by two very good speakers. These oral readings actually go on for several minutes, but I'm just, in the interest of time, going to only show you an excerpt of their speeches, so about 2 to 3 minutes. And then we will move on to examples of previous student speeches, and you're basically going to follow the same format as them. They'll be speaking for like 2 or 3 minutes, and you'll notice before some of the speeches that the speakers told the audience a little bit about what they were going to read. I recommend doing this just so the audience has an idea of what to expect, especially if you're using an obscure reading that no one's familiar with. So first we're going to take a look at a speech by Melanie Lynn Hauser. She's author of Confessions of Supermom. And you'll notice when she's enacting a passage from her own book how animated and perky she is, which is really appropriate for this reading. She really brings her book's words to life.
Hi, my name is Melanie Lynn Hauser. I'm the author of a new novel just out in paperback called Confessions of Supermom. Contrary to popular belief, this is not my autobiography. My kids would be the first ones to tell you that. Instead, it's a novel about a divorced mother of 2 teenagers who becomes a superhero. I think a lot of women will enjoy it because it's about a woman trying to find her true identity in a very complicated world. So, pull up a chair, pour yourself a cup of coffee, and listen while I read a little bit from the first chapter of Confessions of Supermom. Every superhero has an origin. That's what Martin says, and since he's 13, short for his age, and somewhat of a geek, I'm tempted to believe him. Okay, so here goes. For the first time, I am about to reveal the origin of Supermom. That's me. To tell the truth, it's a little embarrassing. I wasn't put into a rocket and sent to Earth by my parents just as my home planet exploded. I wasn't given a special ring by visiting aliens. I wasn't bitten by a radioactive spider. No, it wasn't anything nearly so glamorous. My beginnings are quite humble. I was merely the innocent victim of a horrible Swiffer accident. It all began on a sunny Tuesday morning. Right away, you can tell that this doesn't fit in with other superhero origins, or so Martin says. Most origin stories take place at night, usually in a laboratory or a dark alley, and nearly all are accompanied by really dramatic thunderstorms. But no, my story, my origin, began on a weekday morning during a commercial break for the Today Show, on the floor of my bathroom. It was a typical school day. Kelly and Martin were shuffling through the kitchen like zombies while I nipped at their heels, making peanut butter sandwiches, signing permission slips, and shepherding them out the door just in time for the bus. Then I collapsed on a sofa with my second cup of coffee and caught a few minutes of Katie and Matt. Now, this is my favorite time of day. The only time when I have a few moments to myself. The only time I can just relax and let my mind take me places no one else wants to visit with me anymore. Sometimes I allow myself a glimpse into the future, but more and more these days, as my children are growing up and away, I find myself in the past, when my children were small and soft and perfect.
Okay, so this next speech we're going to take a look at is a oral reading of a poem by Rita Dove. She's a pretty well-known poet. She's a former poet laureate and Pulitzer Prize winner. Her oral reading isn't as animated as the previous speaker, but it's every bit as good. This is a much more somber type oral reading, so it calls for a different type of approach. If she was all sort of spastic like the previous speaker and animated, it would seem kind of odd. Like the previous speaker, though, she really connects with her reading material. And there's really great vocal variety in this speech as well. So have a look.
Was executed. The poem is in 2 parts. Each part has a title. Can you hear me in the back? Is it okay? Okay. Parsley, the cane fields. There is a parrot imitating spring in the palace, its feathers parsley green. Out of the swamp the cane appears to haunt us, and we cut it down. El General searches for a word. He is all the world there is. Like a parrot imitating spring, we lie down screaming as rain punches through and we come up green. We cannot speak an R. Out of the swamp the cane appears, and then the mountain we call in whispers Catalina. The children gnaw their teeth to arrowheads. There is a parrot imitating spring. El General has found his word, perejil. Who says it lives. He laughs, teeth shining out of the swamp. The cane appears in our dreams, lashed by wind and streaming, and we lie down. For every drop of blood, there is a parrot imitating spring. Out of the swamp, the cane appears. The palace. The word the general's chosen is parsley. It is fall, when thoughts turn to love and death. The general thinks of his mother, how she died in the fall, and he planted her walking cane at the grave, and it flowered, each spring stolidly forming 4-star blossoms. The general pulls on his boots. He stomps to her room in the palace, the one without curtains, the one with a parrot in a brass ring. As he paces, he wonders, who can I kill today? And for a moment, the little knot of screams is still.
Okay, so as you could see, two very different examples, but both equally effective oral readings. Both speakers really connected with their material, and if you can come anywhere close to doing what they did, you would probably get an A for the assignment. And some students do. Some students do a really outstanding job. Now we're going to take a look at student examples. The first speech we're going to look at is not a very good example. The student doesn't do a particularly good job. Why don't you pay attention to the speech and see if you can spot what he does wrong, and we'll talk about it after the speech, which will take a few minutes.
Good afternoon, my name is Nicholas Graskamper. I'm going to present a shortened speech of the Queen of the Netherlands. She held it for the opening of the Parliament in 2007. Members of the States General, our country has many grounds for hope and confidence. The economic prospects are good. Entrepreneurs and consumers are optimistic. Young people are able to find jobs quickly. There are also hopeful developments in fields other than the economy. More and more people are willing to make an effort to help each other and improve our living environment. Now in particular, we have opportunities to take measures that will make our country stronger. We must take full advantage of these opportunities. Our country has major tasks ahead. We know that the average age of our population is rising. Businesses and public services like healthcare and education are facing labor shortages. This raises the question of how we will safeguard our prosperity and well-being in the future. The growth of our economy will also have to take place in a more sustainable manner. Too many people feel unsafe. Preventing and combating terrorism, crime, violence continue to demand much of our attention. Dutch society is changing rapidly, and our population is becoming more diverse. People sometimes feel uncertain. They are looking for something to hold on and to a sense of security. These feelings can have profound impact on people's lives. Therefore, additional efforts are needed to increase social cohesion in our country and reinforce tolerance and mutual respect. Change can be a source of strength. In the past, renewal has brought progress to the Netherlands. Our capacity to change and innovate is what gives us the dynamism that is indispensable if we are to engage successfully with the challenges of the future. Within the kingdom, too, a process of change is taking place. Political relations within the kingdom are to be revised. The agreed changes will be laid down next year in proposal for kingdom legislation. It is gratifying that all the islands, territories of the Netherlands and Antilles have joined in this process. However important government policy may be, a society is made up of citizens. The government wants to work with everyone in the Netherlands to build a country in which everyone can feel safe and at home and have a sense of common bonds. Mutual respect between people and respect for the Dutch legal order are essential preconditions. Our Constitution is founded on equality for all persons before the law, freedom of religion or belief, and freedom of expression. These rights demand responsibility and tolerance from us all. Our strength lies in the working together and living together. Members of the States General, you represent our country's vast and rich diversity. You bear a heavy responsibility. The government looks forward to a good working relationship with you. In discharging your duties, you may draw succor from the knowledge that many are wishing you wisdom, and join me in praying for strength and God's blessing upon you. Thank you.
Okay, so what did you think about that previous speech? There were a number of things that could have been better. First of all, there was no variation in his voice, tone, or pace. Uh, he doesn't seem to be very enthusiastic about his speech. He stumbles over some words as he gets towards the middle of his speech, towards the end, and then he apologizes for it, which you never want to do because that only serves to draw attention to yourself. Uh, Overall, it's a very mediocre oral reading. Um, I mean, if you heard that speech, would you be moved? Okay, so now we're going to take a look at our second student video example, and this student is definitely an improvement over the first one. However, there's still plenty of room for improvement in her speech. She stumbles over some words. I think she could have stressed certain words better. At times, she kind of is just very monotone in her presentation, and I think she could have also incorporated some gestures for emphasis and effect. For example, you'll hear her say, "I'm a woman, phenomenal woman, that's me." You know, perhaps she could have like pointed at herself or something like that. So let's take a look.
Everybody, I'll be reading a poem by Maya Angelou. She's very famous for having wonderful poems. The name of the poem is Phenomenal Woman. Pretty women wonder where my secret lies. I'm not cute or built to suit a fashion's model size. But when I start to tell them, they think I'm telling lies. I say, it's in the reach of my arms, the span of my hips, the stride of my step, the curl of my lips. I'm a woman, phenomenally. Phenomenal woman, that's me. I walk into a room just as cool as you please, and to a man, the fellows stand or fall to their knees. Then they swarm around me, a hive of honeybees. I say, it's in the fire in my eyes, the flash of my teeth, the swing of my waist, and the joy of my feet. I'm a woman, phenomenally. Phenomenal woman, that's me. Men themselves have wondered what they see in me. They try so much, but they can't touch my inner mystery. When I try to show them, they say they still can't see. I say, it's in the arch of my back, the sun of my smile, the light of my breast, the grace of my style. I'm a woman, phenomenally. Phenomenal woman, that's me. Now you understand just why my head's not bowed. I don't shout or jump about or have to talk real loud. When you see me passing, it ought to make you proud. I say, it's in the click of my heels, the bend of my hair, the palm of my hand, the need of my care. 'Cause I'm a woman, phenomenally. Phenomenal woman, that's me. Thank you.
Now we're going to take a look at our final student example, and this is an example of why you should avoid using a very famous speech. The student selected Lou Gehrig's farewell address. So let's have a look and we'll talk about it after the video.
Speech by Lou Gehrig. He was a great American baseball player. who had a fatal disease, and this is his farewell to baseball. Fans, for the past 2 weeks, you've been reading about a bad break I got. Yet today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth. I've been in ballparks for 17 years, and I've never received anything but kindness and encouragement from you fans. Look at these grand men. Which of you wouldn't consider it the highlight of his career just to associate with them for one day? Sure, I'm lucky. Who wouldn't consider it an honor to have known Jacob Rupert? Also, the builder of baseball's great empire, Ed Barrow. To spend 6 years with a wonderful little fellow, Miller Huggins. Then to have spent the next 9 years with an outstanding leader, the smart student of psychology, the best manager in baseball today, Ed McCarthy. Sure, I'm lucky. When the New York Giants, a team you give your right arm to beat, and vice versa, sends you a gift, that's something. When everybody down to the groundskeepers and those boys in the white coats remember you with trophies, that's something. When you have a wonderful mother-in-law who sides with you and squabbles with her own daughter, that's something. When you have a father and a mother who work all their lives so you can have an education and build your body, it's a blessing. When you have a wife who has been a tower of strength and shown more courage than you could ever dream existed, it's the finest I know. So I close in saying that I might have been given a bad break, but I've got an awful lot to live for. Thank you.
So, if you are familiar with Lou Gehrig's famous farewell address, when you saw the student give his enactment of it, you probably thought that it didn't do Lou Gehrig justice. Um, and I thought the same thing, but I actually went back and looked at a tape of film of Lou Gehrig's speech, and his delivery isn't all that different from the student's delivery. But the problem is, you know, when you talk about famous speeches, even ones that no one's actually seen for themselves, such as the Gettysburg Address. People had this idea in their head about how amazing the speech was, and you've got all these sort of circumstances surrounding the speech. Like in Lou Gehrig's case, he was retiring from baseball because he was dying. He had Lou Gehrig's disease. So as a result, those speeches tend to be romanticized, and people remember them for being better than they actually were. And people are going to go, audience members will compare that sort of idealistic memory they have of that famous speech in their head uh, with your speech. And of course, you just don't stand any chance when you're facing that sort of comparison. So I would recommend avoiding a highly famous speech such as Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream," the Gettysburg Address, Lou Gehrig's farewell, stuff like that. That's not to say that you can't use a famous speech, but just be aware that there is that factor um, to take into consideration. Okay, so that's going to conclude today's video lecture, but before I leave you, let's just go over the assignment one more time really quickly. So for this first speech, remember it's an oral reading. What you're going to do is choose an already written piece of text that is anywhere from 200 to 500 words. It can be poetry or prose, a Saturday Night Live skit, a monologue from a movie, whatever. But it must have a minimum of 200 words. You will retype the text so that it's 14-point font. Remember, you want it really big so it's easy to read because you're going to be reading off this piece of paper. Make sure it's double spaced, and then you're going to get up in front of the class and deliver it. You want to practice your speech. It should be between 1 to 3 minutes. Practice it in front of people. You're going to be graded on vocal and physical delivery. And before you deliver your speech, remember to tell us a little bit about what you're going to read to us. And remember, you really want to try and pick something that you're enthusiastic about, that you feel comfortable delivering. Practice, practice, practice. If you don't practice the speech, you're going to be really nervous when you get up to speak. You're probably also going to stumble over words, and that will hurt your grade. But try not to be too stressed out about this. Remember, it's only worth a small fraction of your total grade. if you have any questions, feel free to send me an email at mark.grabowski@marist.edu. I'll see you in class.